everyone. My name is Vivek Panchananam. I am a second year medical student at the University of Kansas School of Medicine. My friends call me Viv for short. When I went to undergrad, I was at the University of Kansas, and I studied biology and philosophy. A little bit about myself, things I like to do for fun. I like to cook, and I like to play recreational sports like basketball and tennis, and I played a guitar. So I wrote down some things based off the questions that were sent to me, and I'm just going to go in order and just um, and list off what I have to share based off of my experiences. So the first question is, what was your motivation to enter the medical field, and can you tell us about your journey to where you are today? So, my motivation to enter the medical field, I think there's really three reasons and three things that are important to me in terms of what I do for a career. I wanted to do something that had service involved. I wanted to make sure that the work that I did wasn't for myself. It was really for others and helping others and putting their needs first, I thought was incredibly cool to do as a career. Um, Two, I wanted something that was intellectually stimulating. Like I said, I studied philosophy and biology when I was an undergrad. But the reasons I did that was because I really liked science and maths in terms of every problem usually has an answer in terms of logic, and like you can learn a mechanism of why something works in nature. I really like the scientific method, being able to learn more about things. But I also really like philosophy too. And philosophy really taught me that not everything has an answer, and the way you think about things can lead to a different answer. So I like the linear reasoning that science has, and then the um, the dimension that you can have with problem solving that philosophy gave me. And then one of the most important things, which is the third reason of why I chose medicine, was I love working with people. I think that working in a group of people, specifically a group of people that have very different backgrounds, leads to usually the best solutions. And I wanted to work with a group of people to solve problems that everyone faces. And medicine is for people. It is to treat people, and everyone has multiple problems. Sometimes you won't be able to solve the problems, unfortunately. But when you work with a group of people, you can lead to better answers, better solutions for people. But also, you find the best route to actually solve problems, which is something that I found. So that's something that I thought was really cool about entering medicine. Um, and can you tell us about your journey to where you are today? So, like I said, I went to the University of Kansas for undergrad, which is where I met Julia Balmaceda, and I took a couple years off after undergrad. I worked in Chicago. First year in Chicago, I worked as an AmeriCorps health educator, and that was a great experience to really learn about service. And I worked in a variety of communities in Chicago, which was really nice because I grew up in Overland Park, Kansas. But then I was able to go up north and really learn about just the diversity of a variety of different of communities. And it's really interesting that Chicago's mentioned as a city of neighborhoods, and that was really a cool opportunity for me to learn about. And then my second year in Chicago, I worked at a nonprofit, a healthcare related nonprofit called the Respiratory Health Association, and that really was another experience for me to have health education aspect. But I really learned how um, physicians could work in partnership with nonprofit organizations to lead a cause going forward. And then after that, in 2020 is when I entered medical school, and I've been doing that ever since. Second question, if you can talk to your high school self, what advice would you give for preparing for medical school or your program of study? I think the first thing that I would mention is to find your passion and do that. A lot of people have asked me, like now that I'm in school or whatever, or medical school, they always ask me, like, how'd you get into medical school, or what'd you do to get into medical school? And there's a bunch of things that you need to do. Obviously, be a good student, volunteer, like that kind of stuff. But something that I think is often overlooked is a medical school application is not about the breadth or like how many things you do. It's really about the depth. And what that really means is going back to what I said earlier is to find your passion and do that. You could do 20 different activities, but you probably won't be able to say really what was as impactful for you in all 20 of those things. But if you did like five activities or maybe even like three activities or whatever, um, and you have like significant experiences in all of those that were formative to you into why you're doing things and whatever, that is something that medical schools would love. And as a person, you'd be able to appreciate those things more. Uh, Something that I noticed early on in my education and like academic career is I tried to do a lot of things, but I noticed that I wasn't able to appreciate all of them as much as I could. Like in undergrad, I tried to do a lot of things, but when I was looking back on my undergrad experience while I was applying for medical school, I really wasn't able to note off many important experiences in those activities. But now that I'm in medical school, I don't really do that many activities. One, because I don't think I have that much time to do them, but two, I am passionate about the work that I do now and the two or three groups that I'm a part of now, because those are the things that I'm passionate about, and I don't feel the need to really do so many things. I just do the things that I really enjoy, and when someone asks me a question, why do you do those things, or when an interviewer will ask you that question, why is this important to you, you can be able to really explain why these things are important, and the interviewer and other people will be able to take you for real. Another piece of advice, my high school self, shadow. Shadowing is an invaluable resource because you get to learn what medicine is really like. You can shadow physicians. I've shadowed NPs. I've shadowed PAs. I've shadowed as many careers in healthcare as possible. One, for me to see if healthcare was for me, but two, you really get to appreciate the different levels of providers there are, and medicine is a collaborative process. Um, you won't be able to solve a physician or a patient's problems one on one. It's usually a group of people are able to consult with a patient and actually treat them, and that usually leads to the best form of care. And I learned that through shadowing. Um, and when you shadow, you get to learn a little bit of the science, but the science will come the more you study it. But you also get to see like the artful side of medicine, which I thought was really cool during my shadowing experiences. And what I mean by that is like giving someone bad news, but giving someone bad news in a way that they can actually feel empowered to take action and they can care for themselves. And doctor means teacher. And when you shadow, you get to see how the doctor can explain a simple concept, or I mean, an advanced scientific concept at multiple different layers, as if they were talking to another doctor, as if they were talking to maybe someone else who is a colleague of theirs but didn't go to school for as long, or maybe they could explain it to a patient in the most simplest way who's probably never seen a doctor before. So that's really important. You get to get those experiences when you're shadowing. And the third piece of advice I'd give to myself in high school, and is something I wish I actually knew, was to figure out how you learn. I think in medical school now, I'm learning the type of learner that I am. I need visual stimulation, but I also need to write things down, and I need to repeat things as much as possible just to make sure I get it. And figuring out how you learn is important if you want to learn a new skill or if you want to take on things like higher education, because everyone is different and not everyone's mind is tailored to learn the same thing the same way. Um, so figuring out how you learn specifically, how you can grasp a concept the best way that you can is really important. And the thing I'd mention about this is it does take a lot of trial and error, and I've had plenty of errors, uh, but I've always tried. And I think me persevering and always trying is probably what has gotten me to this point in my career. And I will confidently say, me always being willing to try is what will continue my success. going forward in my academic career. Next question. Was the field of study you chose what you thought it was going to be, and what did you expect, and how has it been difficult or surprised you? Um, okay, so first piece of advice is work ethic is more important than natural intelligence. I have plenty of colleagues in school who are brilliant, and that's awesome. Sometimes it takes some people not a lot of time to grasp a very advanced concept, but something that I've noticed is it's really if you're willing to put in the work that you will succeed. It doesn't matter if you're super, super smart, and it doesn't matter if it takes you a long time to really understand something. What really does matter is as long as you're willing to sit down and study, you can you can accomplish anything you put your mind to, period. I never considered myself to be the sharpest guy in the tool shed. I have to work really hard to make sure I can stand next to my peers. And I really think it's my work ethic that has um, really brought me to this point and will, again, keep me going in the future. And I think something else that is important is advice that you get from others or you read online or whatever will only help to a certain extent. And for example, people told me that medical school was going to be hard, but turns out it was a lot harder than I thought. And I don't say this to discourage people. I think healthcare and medicine is a valuable thing. We're always going to need it as humans. Um, but what I'm trying to say with this is you want to take advice with a grain of salt because anything you get or any advice you get is from that person. And the process that you have towards getting to your goal or studying for a test is really defined by what you do and not by what others have done. So some advice might work, but some advice might not work. And that's why just reflecting on yourself, um, being critical about how you're able to keep pursuing your goal and just keep working on things, you'll be able to find out what works for you. And that advice can be useful for another person going forward. But then again, just taking advice with a grain of salt is always, I think, something that I think is important when you're sharing your thoughts on why a test was so hard or um, why just the whole process, I guess, is just really is something that's defined by you, and advice can only help so much. Okay, next question. Did you stick with the career you thought you would specialize in when you first started school? Um, okay, so I think I read this question incorrectly, but my answer to this question is yes. So I initially came into medical school thinking that I wanted to do emergency medicine, and it is something that's very interesting to me. Um, but I I feel like I've been able to open more doors the more I learn about the human body and the things that I find interesting. I think a little bit about my path to med school now is in college. I was in college and then I scribed in an emergency room, and that's where I really learned about emergency medicine. And then during my gap years, I learned about public health through working with the AmeriCorps and respiratory health nonprofits. So and then now I'm learning a lot about the different organ systems that I really find interesting. So I really like the heart right now, and I just got off shadowing a cardiologist this last week. But I'm also learning about the anatomy and how the body moves, and I have understood that I really like solving problems that have a mechanism involved, that have physical attributes that I can visualize. So it's my career path, I think, is always changing. And as long as you keep an open mind, I think that's really important um, because you will learn that there are so many different types of medicine, there's so many different types of careers in healthcare. So if healthcare is really what you want to do, that's awesome. But you can definitely find your niche of the type of medicine or the type of healthcare you want to practice by shadowing, by getting experience, by learning about all these things. Because the further you get in your career, you'll be able to understand that there is a specific place that you will be able to do the most good for the most amount of people, and you will take personal satisfaction and feel like you want to go back to work the next day. Next question. What would you advise students to do that would better prepare them for their futures in healthcare? I think going back to my original statement about shadowing, I think shadowing is so important uh, because you get to see what current medicine is like. You get to see if healthcare is for you, medicine is for you. And I think my mentors that have shadowed me, a piece of advice that they were given was all the stuff that I'm doing, all the stuff that I'm learning is stuff that's going to eventually be passed down. And they've told me to do the same for students going forward, which is why I'm sitting down trying to offer my advice. But shadowing is really where you get to appreciate that mentor mentee relationship, and you get to ask questions about the current state of medicine, but also where the future of medicine is going to go. And a question that I ask every doctor that I shadow is, what do you think are the problems that doctors of my generation are going to have to solve? And before, like for example, I just shadowed cardiology, and um, this cardiologist mentioned that um, like atrial fibrillation was something that was a huge problem for them, uh, and there wasn't really any good solutions, and it was usually just medication. But turns out once technology started advancing, there's ways that we can actually structurally change the heart through surgery, not by changing the heart or not by like giving someone a new heart, but by like shearing layers of cells within the heart, which is the field of electrophysiology. And that has been a very effective plan B if medications don't work for treating someone's heart rhythm. And I asked this provider, what is the problem that's going to face my in the next 5 to 10 years? And they're saying heart failure is going to be a huge thing. That is going to be a problem for physicians or cardiologists to come. So I only learned about this through shadowing. I didn't learn about it in my classes. I didn't learn about it on the internet. I think you can probably learn about it on the internet if you Google the right things. But if you shadow and you learn from these professionals who have devoted years of their life to learning this craft of medicine, you can take away a lot. So I would recommend people to shadow and always be willing to learn and ask questions. I think that's really important. Next question. How do you balance school, studying, and everyday life? Um, Balance is something that I'm not the best at, and I'm always learning how to do it better. But a piece of advice that I was given a little bit back was, if you're going to do anything with your life, it's not just your career, it's all the things, right? It's like family time, it's your personal time, it's your friend times with your friends. It's also, you have to prioritize time with your career and school and that kind of stuff. But I don't think balance is the best way to define all these things, or talk about all these things. I really think putting a percentage value to the things that you do in a day, things that you do in a week, in a month, is a great way to just really think about what you do in a day. So, for example, um, people always say work-life balance, and if it truly was balanced, it would be a 50% to 50%. But it would be really hard to balance 50% of work with 50% of all the things that you want to do in a day, because all the things you want to do in a day might include family stuff, personal time, like going to the gym, or like going on vacations, that kind of stuff. So I would recommend finding the things that you feel are the most important to you and putting percentage value into that. And then as a result, you can spend the time, all the time in a day, all the time in a week, and a month, with that percentage value. That way, you're able to check yourself on how much time you're spending on doing things, but also you get to know if you're working too much, or if you're studying too much and you're not able to do the other things. That kind of looks like a 90% 10% split, right? So if you can quantify that, you would get a better understanding of how you're actually using your time. So that is something I'd recommend. um, I think some other things that I would recommend are just doing what you're passionate about in terms of how you spend your free time, because when you're working and when you're studying, um, those can be draining because you have to get up early, you might have to go home late. Those can sometimes be emotionally draining. You're not always going to have the best day in the office or the best day studying or that kind of stuff. Um, but when you do something that is personally fulfilling, like your hobbies, then that's something that at the end of the day, your work does not define you. Your career does not define you. What defines you, it's going to sound cliche, is you. It's the things that you find fulfilling, whether it be, traveling, or, I don't know, just playing an instrument, or reading, for example. If these things are things that make you feel happy, then at the end of a long and hard day, then you're going to be able to do those things and be able to appreciate your hobbies, and appreciate that even though you had a really difficult day, you're still able to do something that is personally good for you. Another piece of advice is don't study after 12 a.m. I have broken this rule sometimes, only because I've had to, but I've also understood after multiple times of trial and error, it's hard for me to retain information after 12 a.m. Because I get tired. The caffeine is not working anymore, and it's just time to go to bed. And studies have shown that you remember more information if you get a good night's rest before a test than if you were just to pull an all nighter. And I've done both. I've pulled an all nighter and I've gotten a fair amount of sleep, and I can guarantee my best tests have been when I've been able to get some good sleep. That way, I can just let my brain just chill out for a little bit, and I can just let my brain do its thing, so I can go in for the test tomorrow, and crush that. Um, Next question: if you could go back to high school or undergraduate school, how would you better prepare for your studies? Okay, so how I would better prepare my studies is, or what I wish I could have done is get in the rhythm of studying efficiently. This is only something that I learned within the last month of medical school. So if you don't have this down now, don't worry about it. This is something that you will get to as long as you put time towards getting to it. But studying efficiently is a lot better than just studying for all the hours in the day. Um, and the reason I say that is because you only have so many hours in the day. Uh, you can always spend time studying, but the question of all the time you spend studying is not necessarily equating to how you do on a test. Um, so that's why I think studying efficiently is important. Working smarter, not harder, is important because you have things to do in the day, not just studying or working, but also tending to your family stuff, your personal hobbies, cooking, getting groceries, all this stuff. These are things that you need to do to operate as a person, and your career and your school life is only a small portion of all of that stuff. So being able to learn efficiently, being present in class, making sure, like, and being present in class, it really means like you're paying attention to what the teacher uh, has to say. It means if you're doing one thing, it means not to multitask and do a bunch of things. I thought I was a good multitasker. Turns out I am not. I have to really just sit down, focus on what I'm reading and studying. Therefore, I'm not having to spend so many hours the next day and the day after that trying to understand what I had to learn on Monday, because I spent all the time on Monday really just focusing on what I had to learn that day. And you just rinse and repeat. And the better, the way you get into a rhythm uh, is really valuable, because once you learn that stuff about how you learn, and if you can do that efficiently, you're going to do really well in your higher education if you choose to go that route. Okay, last question. The thought of student debt after I earn my degree is scary. Do you have any advice? Um, I don't have any like advice in terms of like paying debt back because I'm still in the second year of school. But what I will say is student debt is real. Um, uh, the financial aspect of higher education is something that I mean, a lot of people in higher education have a lot of opinions on, but student debt is real. But something that you should consider is that the money that you put forth in this process is an investment in yourself and your skills. And these skills, healthcare, medicine, these are always going to be valuable, not only to you, but also to other people. Um, and something else that was told to me was student debt is real in medicine and healthcare, but you rarely see people like doctors and other people who are in financial binds after they finish their training um, because um, I mean they are rewarded a little bit better in terms of um, like income and stuff. But I mean, it's also at cost of like how much time you spend in the hospital or clinic or whatever. So student debt, I completely understand, is something that people should consider, but it should not be the defining reason as to why you choose to go into higher education. I think higher education really comes to the question of, do you want to spend more time um, learning these skills? Because it's really how you want to spend your time that these skills will be valuable to yourself at all. So there's the monetary component of higher education, but I do not want it should never be a question of money that a person chooses to go into medicine or chooses to go into healthcare. Um, so yeah, okay. So again, thank you everyone for your time and listening to all this stuff. It's kind of crazy that I'm in a position to be able to offer this advice because I remember that not too long ago, or it feels like not too long ago, that I was in your shoes, asking all these questions, eager to learn about um, this process and if I was gonna go through all of this and whatever. But I wish you the best of luck because if you really do want to do this, you can do this. You can just put your mind to it um, and put your heart and soul into this stuff because it will be worth it. And I'm incredibly privileged and honored to be able to say that I'm a medical student. I knew it took a lot of work to get to this point, um, but I think it's been really worth it because I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot of valuable skills, but I do know that the best parts of my being in medical school have been the days that I've been able to work with patients and use this stuff that I've been learning. So it is worth it. And um, yeah, it's worth it. So, best of luck to the future healthcare professionals. I'm just taking it that if you're listening to what I have to say and you've made it to this point, I appreciate you listening to all the stuff that I've had to say. But I do wish you the best of luck, and you can do anything you put your mind to. You just have to sit down and get to studying. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My med school email is v930p172@kumc.edu. You can get my, or it's also vpanchananam at kumc.edu. Julia can provide you with my email address and stuff. But if you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to reach out. Um, like I said earlier, a piece of advice that I was given was the reason my mentors have been willing to teach me all this stuff is because they've had mentors who've done the same for them, and they've asked me to do the same for the future of healthcare and future healthcare professionals. So I would definitely enjoy entertaining any questions that you have about this application process or just anything at all. So please feel free to reach out. Again, best of luck. You got this. Um, good luck with everything.